Well, hello, Kristin, and welcome to the Rebuilding My Health Radio podcast. I am excited to have you on today to talk about your health story.
I'm so thrilled to be here, Casey. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have been wanting to have you on for a while. I follow you and know that you live a pretty active life. You travel and you do things like kayaking and such. But I can imagine, because you have kind of a health history, that those things may not have always been as easy as they are now. So kind of take us back to when your health issues started and share how they impacted your life.
Yeah. So it's really been a journey for, the greater half of my life with gut health issues that started in my teenage years with things like acid reflux and lactose intolerance. That my doctors really just, kind of said, take this pill for this, take this pill for that kind of thing. And, just went with that for a couple of years until in my early 20s, things really took a turn for the worst. And I started to experience some really severe pain to the point where I was brought to the ER about 2 or 3 times and was just, basically all consumed throughout the day. Like I was early in my career, trying to live an active lifestyle. I lived in the city. So constantly on the go, working during the day, wanting to rise in my career. And it was sort of this, opposing pattern where like my health, and my health was kind of plummeting and my career was rising. And it was sort of just like a coming to head of like all these symptoms that I had in the 5 to 10 years prior to that really just got really worse when I was about 21 years old. And so, I just kind of went from doctor to doctor trying to figure out, what's going on. This pain feels way more severe than what I understand about acid reflux and lactose intolerance. It's kind of all the time, totally regardless of what foods I eat. And it was really scary, right? I mean, being in your early 20s, I was in my first job out of school. I was living on my own and I was completely scared. Like I didn't know who to go to. Doctors weren't giving me answers. I was just given a prescription and said, let's hope for the best kind of thing, which didn't really instill a lot of confidence, So in a lot of ways, I kind of felt like I was, like a testing animal for my doctors in some ways, because they really didn't know what to do with me. I was constantly given different medications, like, let's try this for a while. If that doesn't work, let's try this thing, And so I just kind of felt like I was in that trial and error mode for a while. And it was really scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, being 21 and having to navigate something that is, almost debilitating. It sounds like, were you missing work and that?
I wasn't missing work, I think, because I was too afraid to call out of work. It was this thing where it's like, I didn't want to have to explain why, because
Yeah.
For a young girl, it's not very attractive to say that you have gut health issues, right? So I wasn't about to talk about that with my boss. I worked with mostly men. I wasn't going to really talk about that with some of my girlfriends because, we were just new in our friendships. We were all fresh out of college in our new careers, like becoming friends and stuff. So there wasn't really a place that I even felt safe mentioning that. So it was just sort of this unspoken thing. And it was more so just like, when the pain got really bad, I just like run to the bathroom and basically just close the stall door and just cry because I was in so much pain and just didn't know what else to do. And I would just push on and, sit at my desk with my arm hugged around my stomach, just trying to do whatever I could to soothe myself. And I was just, basically silently suffering.
Yeah, right. Oh gosh, so hard. So did you already have an ulcerative colitis diagnosis at that point, or did that come later? What were they saying at that time?
So it was probably about maybe 6 months or so after being in the ER twice and going back and forth between different doctors, trying to get answers. So I lived right in Boston, Massachusetts, which was supposed to be one of the best medical, cities to be in for caliber of doctors and facilities. So I went to what was considered to be the best facility. And they basically just completely shrugged me off. They're like, we don't know what's going on with you. We're not even going to test stuff. It's just, just take this medicine and you'll be fine. And that just didn't make sense to me. I was like, this seems like so far off from what I heard the caliber of care should be here. So I dug deeper and I found somebody else, and they were actually willing to do some deeper testing, ran a bunch of blood work, did some stool testing, did a colonoscopy and endoscopy. and finally came back with a diagnosis of ulcerative colitis. So that was the first time I'd ever heard that. I think I was probably 22 at the time. And so then I finally felt like, okay, now I have an answer. Now I know what this is. In the back of my mind, I mean, again, without answers and just totally being deer in headlights around this, I was starting to think like worst case scenario, like, could this be colon cancer? Because my grandpa on my maternal side of my family actually passed away from colon cancer, and pretty suddenly. Granted, he was much older when that happened, but still, I was like, is that what this is? Nobody's giving me answers.
Right.
I haven't been tested for cancer, but like, is that what it is? So it was like a little bit of a relief to know that it wasn't that. But ultimately, I knew that like if I didn't get the UC figured out, it could lead to that, So it was still this like big scary thing.
Right, right. Absolutely. Yeah, I can totally understand that. But it sounds like they had already given you a prescription for something. What were you taking, and was that helping manage symptoms?
Yeah. So before the diagnosis, I was given just different rounds of prednisone, so steroids, basically just to calm the inflammation and help with the flare-ups that I had every couple of months. And then I think I was given some sort of like, I don't remember what it's called, some sort of like antispasmodic medication to also just help with the flares so that the pain wasn't as intense. So again, basically just like dulling the freak out that my system was having to what was going on. So just kind of like numbing it all. But then once I got the UC diagnosis, I was put on Asacol, which is mesalamine. So that was like a main UC treatment at the time. That was before they had like all the injection-based treatments. It was really just pill-based things at that point. So I was just given those. And they were like these huge red pills that were like almost impossible. Like you almost like choke on them to swallow them. You have to take like 3 or 4 at a time or something every single day. So I was on like all 3 of those then. Like they told me to continue with prednisone, continue with the antispasmodic, and take the Asacol. So at that point I was 22 years old and on 3 really intensive medications.
Wow, wow. And did they help?
Yes and no. I mean, I still had recurring flare-ups. It seemed like about every 3 months I would have one, whether it was like a really severe one that would land me in the ER, or just more like, I don't want to say easy, but less intense one. So there was no, like, I didn't feel like I was getting cured or like we were getting anything further. I just felt like it was like maybe acute symptom management, but it always came back. Like my body was still fighting it because it was like, this isn't really what's going on here. So it just felt like a Band-Aid.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, makes sense. So, and just for listeners who may not be familiar with ulcerative colitis, can you kind of give just like a brief explanation of what it is?
Yeah, so ulcerative colitis is an autoimmune disease within the camp of inflammatory bowel disease. So it's basically like tons of inflammation. It can show up as like bloating and pain, oftentimes like blood in the stool, mucus, bowel movement irregularities, things like that. And it really messes with your nutrient absorption in your system, because when there's so much inflammation, no matter how healthy you're eating, your body can't absorb nearly as much as it could if there wasn't the inflammation there. So a lot of times people will also get really fatigued or have other kind of secondary health conditions come as a result of that, because your body's just not getting the nutrients and fuel that it needs. So I definitely experienced some energy dips during that, as well as like, other health issues like anxiety, depression, which are all linked to gut health, which we can get into later as well, as some dental health issues. So it was sort of like, as I went along, it almost felt like if it rains, it pours kind of mentality for me. It's like, okay, like one domino fell, but now the next one, what's the next one that's going to fall after this? It just seemed like my health was like literally crumbling. And again, I was like in my early 20s and I was like, this just doesn't make sense that somebody as young as me is having all of these issues,
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, yeah. And to, be that age and think, this is something I have the rest of my life. And it's just going to be like this the rest of my life. I'm just going to be like trying to manage it, trying to, put the fire out when you have a flare. And yeah, it's discouraging, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, and what were they kind of telling you to expect? They were just like, here's some medication, you just do the best to, manage the symptoms?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they didn't explain to me. I don't even think they actually told me that it was an autoimmune disease. That was something I figured out in my own research. So I had no idea
Mhm.
like what that was or what an autoimmunity even meant around like how your body's basically attacking certain parts of you because it's, just going through this whole upset. And they didn't talk to me about what inflammation was or really anything. So they were basically just like, here's your diagnosis. Here's the, treatment plan of the supplements. They weren't telling me anything about diet. When I did ask my doctor about that, because in my mind, I was like, well, our digestive system processes our food. So
Mhm.
I know that when I have certain foods, it doesn't feel as well. So can we talk about the connection of this? Like, how could I change
Mhm.
my diet? And he looked at me like I had three heads. He was like, diet has no impact on your disease. And I was like, okay, I'm young and I'm not trained in this, but that just doesn't make sense. Like, how could it not?
Mhm.
If that's like the main thing that's going into the system and this is a system that's aggravated, how could that not be impacting it to some degree? Right. So that was,
Right.
frustrating too. So it was really just, here's some medications, check in with us in 3 months and hopefully your flare-ups will be lessened and, less intensive and less frequent. And that was basically the gist of it. But they were like, there's no cure to this. You'll probably have this for the rest of your life. You'll probably be on these medications for the rest of your life. So it's just sort of a continue on the path and that's it kind of view.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I have heard that so many times where somebody said, with gut health issues says, well, my doctor said that food has nothing to do with it. And it's just so like, okay, like if you eat Doritos or you eat, squash, like there has to be a
Right.
difference, in terms like it doesn't make sense to say that. So yeah, anyway, it's
Yeah.
just so interesting that so many people have that same experience. So how did you kind of ultimately find the alternative and or lifestyle approaches, kind of like start going that direction?
Yeah, it was probably like, I'd say maybe a year and a half after I started, like after I got my diagnosis, that I started to understand that there was a whole nother side of this that nobody was talking to me about. And again, it was all just due to my very in-depth late night Googling and everything. But, through just what I was experiencing, right, and sort of like not feeling like I could talk to anybody about it, all of these just like thoughts and worries and everything were just constantly circling in my mind. And so, I just fell I just felt like I had so much anxiety, right? Like both from that and just being early on in my career. I was basically like heading up the marketing department of a brand new tech startup company, fresh out of college, like learning, my entire field, like literally while I'm doing it. So very high pressure, very fast paced career, on top of having this like rapidly advancing disease, right? So it was like I was trying to hold both things together and just feeling very alone and like nobody was helping me, like nobody else understood what was going on for me. So like holding all of that inside was extremely stressful. So
Yeah.
I just felt like my anxiety got to a point where it was debilitating from both of those factors. And so I had read somewhere, I don't remember where, but that acupuncture could help with anxiety and stress. And so,
Mhm.
I was at a point where I was like, I'm going to try anything. Like, I don't
Mhm.
care. Like, I just have to try anything at this point. I can't keep living like
Yeah.
this. So I went and found an acupuncturist and, for the first time ever, they checked my pulse, for different organ systems in my body. And she instantly pointed out that, well, obviously my gut was super unhappy and inflamed, but she also shared that my adrenal glands were really tanked out and exhausted. And I had never really heard of adrenal glands before, but she explained to me
Mhm.
that that's, a lot of like where we have like our energy and stuff. And if we're burned out, then, that's basically a system that's mainly, impacted. And then that can have a downstream
Mhm.
effect on your hormones. And I was experiencing some hormone imbalances and period issues too. So it kind of like it all started to click,
Mhm.
for the first
Mhm.
time. And that was the first time I ever kind of started to have a bigger bird's eye view of like these different systems and the effect of everything on my body. And so like from that point onwards, I was hooked. I was like, whatever she says, I will do, because this finally resonates. Like, I feel like I'm actually getting answers for the first time, you know? So she obviously was able to help me to the extent she could through acupuncture, but she also recommended working with some form of a holistic practitioner on, dialing in on my diet, because she shared instantly that diet has a massive impact on my disease. So again, immense amount of relief, being like, thank you.
Yeah.
Finally, someone's affirming what I've believed. And so, she shared with me like just a couple of quick things that I could think about with my diet, because my doctor at this point had just said, eat calming foods like, bread and rice and stuff, all things of which can very much trigger an already very inflamed and unhappy gut, right? So I was actually being told to eat things that made it worse, which is why I was continuing to get more recurring flare-ups. So she basically told me to go on the paleo diet, to go totally grain-free and dairy-free, sugar-free, avoid, caffeine as much as I could, and sugar and stuff like that. And so, I went home, Googled it, got it like a recipe book off of Amazon right away, dove right in, went to Whole Foods, got everything. And within like 2 weeks, most of my gut symptoms, like the really debilitating, painful ones, were completely gone just by changing my diet. Like we hadn't even started on any supplements or anything, just doing the acupuncture and doing the diet. So that was huge, right? I was like, okay, we're definitely onto something here. But still, like, my adrenals were very, very tanked out. So I ultimately found through Instagram a functional health practitioner who actually specialized in adrenal health and hormone health. So I joined a program that she had, kind of worked through that a lot, was able to, in the period of like 3 or 4 months, rebound my adrenals from like literally completely bottomed out to like back in the perfect normal range. Like that happened really quickly, because I just followed the protocol, to a T. So it was just sort of like following these little breadcrumbs of try this, now try this, now try this. And it all just continued to connect. And I was starting to finally feel better.
Wow. Yeah. That's really powerful though, to make the diet changes and within 2 weeks see your symptoms pretty much go away.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
huge.
I mean, at least like the majority of your gut symptoms. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so encouraging, to have that experience and, to kind of like spur you on and be like, well, okay, what next can I do that is gonna, like take me even further? And so, yeah, and the adrenal piece is really interesting to me. And I think people are starting to talk about it more. I'm like hearing more about it. It's been part of my story. And I'm so glad to hear it. I'm seeing like more and more podcasts and posts about adrenals. Because it is, very much outside of the conventional medicine. Like, my conventional doctor is really never going to talk about adrenals. So, but it is important. So you feel like in terms of the adrenals specifically, was the acupuncture helping the most, or what did you do specifically for it?
So the acupuncture definitely helped a little bit with kind of my body, like rebalancing, just how it handled stress and stuff like that, and just kind of removing some stuck areas. But it was ultimately the program I worked on with a functional health coach who helped me with like more specific dietary tweaks for the adrenals to give it specific nutrients. Like vitamin C, for example, is a huge nutrient for both your adrenals and your hormones. And like just better understanding like what other supplements I could take. And then also especially lifestyle factors. Like at the time I also wasn't sleeping well. I kind of felt that like wired, tired feeling at night, where it was like my body almost got a second wave of energy around 10 p.m. Whereas like, everyone else is getting tired, I was getting more awake. And so I wasn't sleeping well. So I was better understanding how that was also, taking a tax on my body. And I learned for the first time, how to create more of like a sleep routine and what sleep hygiene looks like, to just better take care of myself and get my body ready for sleep. And then especially some more like stress management tools. Cause like I said, I was in a very high pressure, very fast paced career. And so just like for the first time understanding like, what breath work is, or mindfulness, or just other mindset ways to just better take care of myself and not always just be on the go and burning the candle at both ends. So it really was just kind of like seeing all of those factors of here's the different things in your life where this can show up and what can be exhausting your adrenals specifically. And here are some easy everyday things that you can do to give your body the nutrients it needs, and also have new like habits and lifestyle factors to implement. So again, like I followed those all to a T, because I was like, back against the wall, like I will do whatever it takes. So it was really a mix of all of those.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah. So you've got the diet, the adrenal support specifically, which help, and then like hormone stuff, sleep, stress management. And so how did you kind of weave in some stress management with your very demanding job? Like, because you're going probably pretty long days. Yeah. So did you take breaks in the middle of the day, or like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think for me it was definitely baby steps, and it's been more so
Hmm.
in the last couple of years, like more recently, that
Hmm.
I've really dialed in things and done like true nervous system healing. This
Hmm.
was really me just, kind of dipping my toes in and starting to figure out what this even meant for me. So yeah, it was little tweaks like just giving myself a bit more time in the morning versus like jumping up and instantly getting on the go. Yeah, taking some breaks during the day, like even just like, when it's lunchtime, leaving the office and going for a little walk or something to get fresh air and walk away from the
Hmm.
computer, or, putting the phone down after dinner and not stressing myself out late at night with scrolling endlessly on social media or whatever. And then, yeah, like breath work was really powerful too, because I recognized that I was a very just shallow breather, which is a stress response where we really just kind of breathe from the top of our chest up. And we're not actually breathing deep down here with our ribs and having like deep belly
Hmm.
breaths and stuff, which is where your body gets into more of a parasympathetic state. So I got like a whole book and kind of went through a whole like breathwork journey too. And that was a really powerful tool for me that I could do even when I was sitting at my desk during the day, and just recognizing like, oh, I'm doing shallow breathing and I feel like my heart's racing now because of this. Let me just like slow it down. Let me expand the breath, do deeper belly breaths, and really just, kind of slow my body down. And that was a
Hmm.
huge game changer for me.
Hmm. Right, right. Absolutely. Yeah. And how cool. And at this point were you still in your 20s when you were doing the breathwork stuff, or is that more recent?
Yep. Yep. That started pretty early
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, yeah, which is so fantastic to, learn at an early age to have these tools to manage your health. So, anything else that you feel like was kind of a major pillar of helping you get better?
The other part was, well, after I worked on my adrenal glands and hormones, was like once I kind of got my body into a better sense of safety, essentially, like that's one of the reasons why
Mhm.
we went down the adrenal health route. Even though like I was still, going through my gut health stuff, because like my body literally just didn't feel safe. It had just always been kind of like on and on alert and always working and go and
Right.
stuff. So we really needed to kind of do that first. But once I went through that program, then I continued on with another functional health coach who specialized in the gut and autoimmunity, and did some deeper testing, did some advanced stool testing and food sensitivity testing to figure out, what specifically was triggering my ulcerative colitis, because I knew that it just didn't come out of nowhere. So came back, the test results came back, and I had 30 food sensitivities out of like
Yeah.
50 that we tested for. It was all foods that I was eating like all the time, even like really, innocent healthy foods like blueberries and kale and cucumbers and stuff, and even
Yeah.
tea, like everything I was eating. And as
Right.
I got into learning more about health and wellness, I finally understood like why that was, that my body was reacting basically to foods I was eating all the time because it was inflamed and irritated. And when I was eating foods all the time, it was just, not happy with those. So anyways, but so there was that. And then I basically worked with her to customize, what I could eat then, based on that, to avoid those foods and basically give my gut
Mhm.
kind of a break from those so it could begin to heal. And because you can recover from food sensitivities, they're not like a, lifetime
Mhm.
sentence. So that was good news, that it was just a temporary, like kind of couple months thing. And then during that time too, we ran an advanced stool pathogen test. And again, this affirms something I'd asked my doctors about, over 2 years ago at this point, like, are there any bad bugs like bacteria or fungus or parasites in my system that might not be, good for me? Because I started to learn about that too. And again, was looked at like I had, 3 heads, like, oh, that stuff's not applicable for you. You just have ulcerative colitis. That's all there is. My question was like, well, why? Like, what is triggering this? Like, there's something here, right?
Mhm.
And so as soon as we got those results back, I had 2 severe parasites. I had one really bad bacteria, C. difficile, which is one that like a lot of people can contract from hospitals. I had been in the ER 2 or 3 times at this point. And I had a really bad candida infection, which is a fungus. So I had like the whole gamut of like all the bad bugs in my system. And so we very methodically kind of addressed one at a time, and then went on to the next one and the next one. And it was probably like a 4-month-long protocol. And at that point, by the time I'd finished that protocol, well, during it, I already started to feel even better than I had just after dietary tweaks. Like I finally felt like my system was more at calm, more at peace, and it felt stronger. Like it didn't feel like it was constantly on alert as much, and it didn't feel like as many things triggered it, probably because we were just clearing out the things that were making it unhappy in the first place, right? Yeah. And then, you know, after that, I felt like I was fully in remission for the first time. Like I just like woke up one day and like just something intuitively was like, you're in remission. And I just like really felt that. I was like, yeah, like I feel like I don't have any symptoms. I feel like my system is stronger. I don't feel like I'm as prone to flare-ups. I don't feel as afraid of food anymore. I feel like my body can handle things. I feel like I could, you know, travel now or whatever. Right. And so, yeah, that was a huge win. So at that point, I just felt like my doctors weren't able to support me with how deep I had gone on this stuff anymore. And so I made the decision on my own to wean myself off of my medications, because I just felt like my body really wanted to kind of take the reins from here. So that was my own personal decision and personal journey to do that. And I never looked back. I never needed them again. My system was fine after that. And yeah, it was powerful.
Wow. Yeah. It must have been, you know, to sort of kind of take back the control and realize that all the things that you are doing, all the steps you're taking really were making a difference. And to wean off the meds kind of slow, you know, did you do that slowly or pretty slowly? How did that go?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go like cold turkey. I'd say maybe like I took a month or 2 to kind of wean off, just like cutting down on the amount. You know, and again, like I've always considered myself to be a pretty intuitive person. So I would just sort of listen to my body. And if it felt like it was ready to go down to the next level after that, I would do that, kind of stay at that amount for a while. And then when it felt like it was ready again, I would go down again. So I just really listened to my body and just intuitively, you know, felt like what I needed to do, and it worked.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So cool. Um, to have that experience. And I am curious, you know, what through all of this, what have you kind of learned could be some causes of ulcerative colitis? I mean, do you think the gut infections were actually triggering it, or, you know, what is it? Or is it leaky gut? You know, what happens that sort of causes UC?
Yeah. So it can be a multitude of different things. Like at that point, back when I was doing all this testing and stuff, my understanding was that it was really solely the bad, you know, bacteria, the parasites, the candida and stuff that were triggering it. And that was like, that kind of became my answer at the time, because that was kind of my scope of understanding. But as I went deeper in my journey, because I've been on the journey ever since, it's been like a 15-year journey at this point, I started to learn that there's actually a deeper emotional component to gut health issues, because a lot of times we hold our emotions, our stresses, our traumas in our gut. And so it was really just like, I've always been a very like highly sensitive person. I pick up on other people's emotions, other things just going on externally for me. And so I think even from a young age, I took on like my parents' stressors, or I just took really personally, like, you know, things that happened to me throughout my life, and really just kind of held it in my body. And I started to have what I consider to be like a nervous belly. Like anytime I got stressed, like I always felt kind of that like fluttering feeling in my stomach. And so I feel like that ultimately made me more prone to be an ideal host for these things. So this is probably getting more on like the like energetic side of things. But I truly believe that that is a huge component to us, because emotions are really just like energy in motion in our body. And if we have stuck energy from past experiences or thoughts or things that happen to us, that if we don't know how to process those things, which most of us don't know how to do, especially when we're little, it just stays in our body. And then that creates what's called dis-ease. Like that's really what the word disease means, is dis-ease in the body. When it's not at ease because it's stressed, because it's holding on to this stuff, then it basically becomes an ideal host for bad bacteria to take up space, because those things thrive on an environment that's weaker and just more prone to stuff. So I feel like that ultimately made me more prone to this. And I also feel like, you know, in a lot of ways, my UC was actually a gift to me, because it allowed me to actually tap into my gut instincts and my intuition. And it ultimately, you know, really guided my career, because I completely changed career paths from this. So in a lot of ways, it's been a big gift for me. So I think it's a multitude of things, right? I mean, obviously the bad bugs and stuff were a huge component. And once I cleared those out, I was in remission. So that's obviously a huge factor, but I always look at like, what's the real root cause? Like what really contributed to this in the very first place? Like I want to go back to the original why, right? And that's what I feel like it is. And then I got prone to having more of those things. And then because my gut was all out of balance with these bad bacteria and stuff, then I got things like leaky gut. That also has an energetic and emotional component to it too. Like if we have leaky boundaries in our life, then our physical body can also get quote unquote leaky. And then, you know, I was also just more prone to, you know, the food sensitivities as well because of that. So it was all just sort of like a ripple effect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So important to mention the emotional aspect of it. And did you do some specific, you know, work around that, therapy, that kind of thing?
I tried some stuff, like I tried conventional therapy, but it just kind of felt like we were working in circles. It didn't feel like it was actually moving me forward. So at that time, like I tried, but it didn't really work. You know, I was dealing with the grief of losing my dad very unexpectedly, and just a lot of other big things that had happened to me. So I wasn't really like finding the right support at that time. It's been more in the last like 6 years or so that I've found ways to work through that and actually process my emotions in a really healthy and productive way. But at the time, there wasn't really like, I wasn't finding the right modalities. So it kind of came in the later half of my journey.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So how about now? What is your maintenance routine to kind of stay healthy?
Yeah, so it's very lightweight at this point. You know, whereas before I was taking, you know, a whole cabinet full of supplements and stuff, and I was like following, you know, the autoimmune paleo diet to a T and stuff. There's a lot more balance in my life now that I'm, you know, really like fully in remission and beyond that at this point. So, you know, I only take a handful of supplements, only like, you know, 2 of them, or even, you know, for the gut. And it's really just like maintenance type stuff. And I don't even use them every day. Again, I like to be very intuitive with stuff. So I only take supplements when I feel like I even, you know, need or want them. My diet, you know, I still keep, you know, pretty clean. Like I rarely ever drink coffee because I know that's a huge trigger for me. I try to stay away from, you know, sugar as much as possible. I'm, you know, fully gluten free. I'm mostly entirely dairy free. So I'm pretty much still, you know, paleo, but there's a little bit more balance than there used to be. Whereas before, like when I was in the depths of my healing journey, I had to be really strict with that to allow my system to heal, because any sort of like re-triggering of eating those foods could just, you know, trigger inflammation again. And I wanted to do whatever I could to cut that out. But now, like if I feel, you know, like if we're on vacation or we're out once in a while and there's something that might not be like 100% compliant, and I feel like my system is fine to have that, like if I'm really relaxed and I feel like I've been, you know, taking care of myself well lately, then I might like have a little bit of cheese on something, or I might like, you know, have the ice cream with the sugar or something, right? So I always just like check in with my body, and again, like very intuitively, like how am I feeling? Do I feel like I want to, you know, I should stay really strict because something could send me over the edge, or do I feel like I could introduce a little bit more and have some balance? So that's kind of how I do with my diet. And then like breath work and mindfulness is really an everyday practice for me. So yeah, a lot of this stuff is really just become ingrained as habits at this point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Great. And I know because you talk about this in social media that you have days when you have clear boundaries. You have days when you don't do email at all, like you don't check email at all, which I think is yeah, an incredible and important step to take, you know, because I know based on, you know, listening to you, you're a pretty driven person. You know, you have a lot that you're, you know, trying to achieve, and you have a very full life and all that. So has that been hard to kind of set those boundaries with yourself?
It probably was at first. I mean, it's been a couple of years since I've been
Mhm.
doing that. But I think like as in like the later part of my healing journey, when I realized that like my people pleasing tendencies and my go mentality and type A personality and all of these things I was categorizing myself with were ultimately putting others in front of myself, that if I ever wanted to truly get better and feel more ease in my body, that I had to put boundaries around it. And it actually felt really, really good when I started to put those in, because it felt like for the first time I was actually honoring me and my needs. So like I put on like clear do not disturb notifications on my phone after a certain hour at night. A lot of times I will have my phone like completely in the different room, after dinner time. So I'm not even tempted to look at it, kind of thing. I don't get any sort of notifications from social media, from email, from anything on my phone. Like when I check those things, it's because I'm choosing to. I only check email a couple times in the week. And I have one day in the week every Wednesday where it's sort of like what I call my CEO day, where I'm just like taking care of myself, whether it means like health related stuff or just like, thinking on like strategy related stuff for my work or whatever it might be. And that's a day where like I'm totally like, signed offline. I'm not working with my clients. I'm not taking on, new projects or working on anything really. It's just, me taking care of whatever I want to for myself. And that's been immensely helpful, just to like really be in my power with that and honor what I need.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, super important steps there that you mentioned. Just, yeah, having some distance from your phone and from the social media and alerts and all that, I think can make a huge difference in helping you unplug. Okay, just a couple more questions. This is so interesting. How about your anxiety? Did that all just kind of go away as you were healing your gut and doing more of this sort of, stress reduction and all the other stuff?
Yeah, it definitely did. Because when I started to learn about the connection between like the mind gut connection through what's called the vagus nerve, and how basically information is sent from our brain to our digestive system through that, then I understood like when you have an unhappy gut, that sends a signal up to the brain that the body's not safe, right? And then you get into the state of anxiety. And even when like even depression has been studied to be linked to gut health issues too, because when you have an imbalance of good to bad bacteria in your digestive system, that creates an imbalance in the brain chemicals as well. So when I think my depression like only came on when I was going through the depths of this, and it went away as soon as I felt like I was in
Mhm,
remission. So I didn't actually even have depression. It was really just a gut imbalance that was presenting itself
mhm,
in my brain
mhm.
chemicals. So that was a relief, because my doctors
Yeah.
were, of course, putting me on antidepressants, which completely numbed me. Like I didn't feel anything. And it was really, really scary. And they also had me on
Mhm.
some really strong anti-anxiety medications, which also caused me to not feel anything. So I was on both of those at the same time as all of those heavy gut medications. So like, I remember one time my now husband, we were like in the early stages of our dating. He saw like my whole supplement or medication cabinet at the time. And he was like, I felt like I walked into like an 80-year-old's bedroom, like seeing how many medications you were on. Like he had no idea. Like that was really eye-opening for him. And I think for the first time that helped me see like, oh yeah, this isn't right. Like this isn't good. This is too many. Um,
Yeah.
so that was just like a whole, journey in and of itself. But yeah, just by getting my gut aligned, the anxiety, by getting answers that helped, answer a lot of those questions that was causing anxiety. Getting a better balance to my gut helps to balance the brain chemicals that were in some ways triggering the anxiety. And then working through, the stress and emotional component that was also triggering the anxiety helped a lot. It's something that I still, maintaining to this day, because I think, we just live in a generally fast-paced and stressful, lifestyle as a culture. So it's something that I'm always very aware of, and always, working on and doing, continued nervous system work and emotional processing, and, working through mindset stuff as we always do. I'm always very open about my health journey, and there's always next level things that I'm working on. So I feel like I'm really kind of at the pinnacle of working on some really fascinating parts of that. But day to day, I don't feel, nearly as anxious as I used to. It's probably 5% what it used to be. So that's a huge, huge win.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's amazing. It's so great to hear. Yeah,
Yeah.
how everything kind of fell into place as you were doing all the other stuff. So,
Yeah.
so Kristen, yeah, so you talked a little bit about how this inspired a career change, and tell us more about where this has led you and what you're doing now.
Yeah. So the gist of it is that, once I was able to get into remission and saw just the power of functional and holistic medicine and health techniques, it really just inspired this excitement in me that I hadn't felt in a while. Like I felt like, my marketing career at this point, which is, I'd been a couple years into, like I was really good at it. I could do it in my sleep. Like I was doing, copywriting and online ads and like all sorts of digital marketing. And I was good at it. I liked it, but it wasn't like lighting me up as much as the health idea did. And I was like, if it took me this long to figure out that this option for my health is available, that I wanted to do something about that. I wanted to help other people who were as stuck as I would to know that there's answers and feel hope and not have to go through as big and long of a struggle as I did. I felt like that was unacceptable, that this amount of information wasn't as available at this time. And so I ended up like basically interviewing the health coaches that I worked with in my time and kind of asked them like, what was your path to get to here? And they shared with me the different schools and trainings they went through and stuff. And by the next week, I was already enrolling in the first school. Like I just dove headfirst in while I was still doing my marketing full time. I was actually running my own marketing agency. By that point, I left working in-house and was running my own company. But ultimately, I wanted to start my second company around being a functional health coach. So I went through multiple different certifications to do that. And it was just some of the most gratifying work that I ever did, just getting to really just give back to the community and help others who also had, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, any other forms of IBS or IBD. Also worked with, women with hormone imbalances and, migraines and other forms of autoimmunity, like really kind of the whole spectrum. And it was just so gratifying to be able to, help others and just see them, get answers a lot faster than I did and get results a lot faster than I did too, because that was ultimately my mission. And so I ran that business for about 4.5 years and absolutely loved it. Ran it, full time. I shut down my marketing agency because it was going so well and just loved it so much. I wanted to pour all of my, mind, body, and soul into it. But then something interesting really happened and things kind of came full circle. Like I was planning on running that business until I retired, basically, whenever that was going to be. But I started to, like, as my business is growing and my following online was growing and my programs were selling out and stuff, that more and more health practitioners and peers were reaching out to me with questions because they didn't have the marketing background, they didn't know how to do copywriting, they didn't know how to do sales, they didn't have an entrepreneurial background, and so they had gotten this great certification and they were absolute experts at what they did, and so many peers that I respected immensely that knew even more than I did. But hearing that like they were really struggling with like getting clients or closing, clients on sales calls or building their programs or pricing themselves or just all the questions. And that kind of sparked, it was kind of like the second spark for me. The health stuff was the first spark. And then this was kind of like an even bigger spark. I was like, wow, like what if I could bring back my marketing and entrepreneurship background, but infuse that in the health and wellness space and take everything that I've done to grow, my successful business here in the health space, and, hundreds of other companies to date through my marketing agency, and kind of bring that into this space, still being deeply in the wellness space, but helping other practitioners, like lifting them up and teaching them how to do this and grow a practice that really reaches enough clients and makes the impact that they wanted to make in this world. And like that just lit like a whole nother fire in me that I was just like so excited about. And it was just totally full circle. So, so I just, started to kind of put together some programs around that. And within 6 months, I was completely booked out with group programs and one-on-ones as a business mentor in this space. So I ramped down, I stopped taking on health coaching clients, which was a bittersweet moment, but I still get to work with a lot of my clients on some of their more complex cases, and just, hearing all the wins that they get with their clients just, still keeps me deeply connected to it. So it's really sort of the best of both worlds. So it's been a really unexpected but beautiful journey.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's kind of cool, I imagine, to see how, everything you've ever done has brought you to this point. Like, all your marketing experience plus your experience as a health practitioner, coach, kind of brings you to this really powerful place where you can offer those gifts and talents and experience. So And think about how much this is multiplying, with all the health coaches that you're helping, they are helping so many people. So, yeah, that's really reaching much further than you could reach as an individual health coach.
Exactly. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the opportunity I saw, just the ripple effect of like how many more people I could influence through, helping all these other practitioners versus what I could do on my own in my practice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So cool. Well, Kristin, tell listeners where they can find and follow you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm over on pretty much all the social media channels, mostly on Instagram and Facebook. So my Instagram is Health Wellness Business. I'm on Facebook as Kristin Thomas. There's probably a lot of different Kristin Thomases, but you can look at my face on there. You're welcome to connect with me there. I'm on there every day. Our website is healthwellnessbusiness.com. And if anyone on here is a practitioner listening to this, I have a free guide there right on top of my website called 6 Scroll Stopping Social Media Prompts for Health and Wellness Practitioners. So if you want to kind of infuse some of the marketing support that I teach my clients every day around how to just really naturally magnetize more clients who are looking for help in the area of health that you specialize in, just through organic like storytelling and just simply sharing your message, not being like salesy or sleazy or anything like that. Those are some things you guys can grab for free to kind of get a snippet of that. But yeah, otherwise, welcome to connect with me anywhere else.
Yeah, well, great. Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic download. So cool. So just as a wrap up question, what advice would you give to others facing inflammatory bowel disease or just kind of health struggles in general?
Yeah. What's coming to mind might sound a little bit cliche, but I'm going to say it anyways, like literally listen to your gut. I feel like so many people that I got to work with in my practice too, also just kind of literally had this gut knowing just that I did of like, there's something else here. This isn't the answer, or this other thing, I think is the answer, where am I going to get this support? So like, if you are having any of those questions, then lean into those, right? Because that is literally your gut instinct speaking to you. I mean, we actually have more bacteria cells in our intestines than we do human cells in our body. So there's definitely an intelligence there and a knowing. So really just trust that, right? Like do your research, connect with other people. You guys are welcome to reach out to me. I've been so blessed to work with some of the most incredible and talented health practitioners through my work here now at Health and Wellness Business School. So if anybody ever needs a referral to somebody, whether it's in the gut health space or hormones or thyroid or whatever, I'm always super happy to connect people and give back in that way. But just don't give up. Like trust what you know is right for your body. Like better than anybody else what is going on. So if you're not getting the right answers, keep digging, because I promise there is an answer out there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good advice. Yeah. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and inspiration. I know that it will touch people and they'll get a lot out of it. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
Yes, absolutely. Take care.